Okay. Let my clicker kry. Okay, so what is blockchain and what is Bitcoins? So before I start there, I'd like to introduce you to somebody. No? Oh, sorry. Yuji Igiri. This guy, he was a professor of economics and accounting at the Carnegie Mellon University up until 1991, and he died a little bit earlier this year. Now, there are many scholars who believe that he was the father of one of the most significant inventions in the last 500 years. Putting it up there with the printing press and with the web. So I want to ask you, has anybody heard of this person? Okay, so before this invention of his is called triple entry accounting, and I'd like to explain to you a little bit why this is so significant and why this is actually has an impact on blockchain. So let me just explain to you a bit about accounting. As you know, accounting is a discipline for recording economic events, and it's essentially a mind model that you build of what is happening economically within a household or in a firm or in the economy or whatever the case is. You have to forgive me, I'm not good with big crowds, so I'll try my best. Okay. So the first accounting models became available probably about 5,000 years ago or so. These were called single entry accounting systems. And essentially all it is, or what it was just a list of entries. So it would be a list of number of people that owed me money. Or it might be a list of how many cattle I had and what I did with them, or how many bushels of wheat I had, or whatever the case is. The important thing is that once you started to record these trades, you can now suddenly do a lot more trades, and it can be a lot more sophisticated. So, but there's a major limitation in such a model, and that is you have to trust the person who writes up this ledger for you. If a person makes a mistake, or they, for whatever reason, delete an entry from such a ledger, then it's gone. That money just disappears. It never existed. So you can imagine that's quite a problem. Now, over time, this is now, 5,000 years ago. So over time, trade started to grow. I mean, you can think of the trade routes and the ships that went to all corners of the world with all these goods. And to keep track of all of these trades really became problematic. They were very error-prone, and a lot of money was lost. So roughly in the 1400s, it's called the dual entry accounting system was codified. And that is what we know today as debit and credits. And with the power of print, this is what we use today. If you use a SAP system or an Oracle system, or if it is QuickBooks or Sage or any of those electronic accounting systems, it's a dual entry accounting system. So, but this accounting system is also starting to show its age. And the big problem there, again, is trust. If you think about it, these accounting systems, these ledgers of records, are sitting behind the corporate brick wall, and it's very opaque. You can't really get to it, you can't inspect it, you can't do much with it. So what we then do is, or what we did was we started to introduce processes to establish trust. So you think about it, a company has an auditor, or it might have auditing committees and so forth. There's all things that we put in place to ensure that whatever is presented to us in terms of results are trustful or trustworthy. But now one can ask, are those people trustful? And for that reason, now we start implementing or introducing governing bodies, and we write legislation, and we put committees together and so forth. The point is that we are continually trying to establish trust in whatever we are presented with. And I mean, in spite of all of that, trust is being broken daily. I mean, just have a look at the newspapers. There's not a day that doesn't go by that you don't see articles of corruption and trust, public trust being broken. So you see the problem is that the systems that we use are not inherently trustful. That means that we have to actively do stuff to make whatever we see trust, or to make sure that what we see is trustworthy. And then, excuse me, and then in 1989, Professor Ejiri made this breakthrough. He said, okay, let's take a third entry. So he took a dual entry accounting system, and he took a third entry, and this is then, or introducing just this third entry would make it trustful. And let me explain to you how that would work. So you have two parties agree on a transaction. So on the one side, you have one party with their debits and credits, and on the other side, you have another party with their debits and credits. But they agree on a transaction, on that specific transaction, and then this transaction is stored separately in a ledger which is cryptographically secured. That means you can't change it. So imagine in a model like that, I don't need to establish trust. The trust is inherent in that ledger, the fact that that we've agreed on this transaction and was saved in this ledger. So let me give you another example. I buy a car. Let's say I buy this car from Pete. And I pay with cash. So in my books, I'm going to debit my assets, and I'm going to credit my bank or my cash. He's going to debit his bank or cash and credit his assets or stock or whatever. Yeah. But at that point, we agree that this is a fair representation of the truth, or an objective representation of the truth. That is then stored in an external public ledger, and it is cryptographically secured. It means nobody can go in there and change it. Now, remember, this is now what I'm talking about, this third entry in the triple entry accounting system. So, if you think about it, in such a model, I don't have to prove that that car belongs to me. I mean, it's there in the ledger. We've agreed on that transaction, it's in that ledger. I can track the money, I can see what happened, where the money came from, where it went to. So, because all of the information is inside of this public ledger. So, but the reason why I'm telling you all of this is that the beauty and the elegance of this solution is the fact that you don't just have to apply it to financials or to financial transactions. It can be applied pretty much to anything that is event-driven. So let me give you another example, or an example that's nothing to do with accounting. If you look in a democratic society like ours, where you have a vote, I mean, think of the fundamental questions that is asked. First of all, who voted? Were they entitled to vote? Were the votes counted correctly? Do those votes, do they represent what the intention was of the voter? Are those results auditable? And if they are auditable, can we trust the audit? So you can imagine, if you have a system like this where a vote is recorded in the ledger, and it's immutable, it is encrypted, it's immutable, what an amazing world it would be. Okay, so one person saw the light, so to speak. His name is Satoshi Nakamoto. I'm sure everybody's heard of him. He was the inventor of the Bitcoin. He published in a paper in 2008. He said, I've been working on a new electronic cash system that's fully peer-to-peer with no third party. And that was the birth of Bitcoin. And again, it is fundamentally built on the concept of triple entry accounting systems. All right, so the rest of the presentation, which is not long, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what is Bitcoins, and then an underlying technology, which is a blockchain, and hopefully then you'll have a better understanding of what this represents. Okay, so first of all, what's a Bitcoin? The important thing is it's a currency. And as you know, a currency is a medium of exchange with notes and coins, and it is controlled by a central bank. The reason why the central bank controls it, by the way, is to ensure that you don't have double spending. In other words, if I take the coin out of my pocket and I give it to somebody, it's gone. I can't respend it. But it's also then to be able to control the introduction of new units into the market. Now, with a cryptocurrency, it is also a means of exchange, but it is fully electronic. It means it doesn't have a physical form. You can't print it out. You can't get a note that says 10 Bitcoin or have a minted coin that says it's a Bitcoin. Okay, and the thing is with a cryptocurrency, again, is that the transactions, as they happen, they are secured, they are cryptographically secured into a public ledger, this third ledger I was talking about a bit earlier. Okay, so but this is not, the idea of digital currency is not new. I want to ask you, who uses e-bucks? Yeah, I see quite a few hands, okay? That's an example of electronic currency or a digital currency. It's completely electronic. You can't print it. I can't go to the ATM and go and draw 50 e-bucks. You can't do that. And I can use it as it is a medium of exchange. So I can buy with it. Okay, now the only difference between that and a Bitcoin is the fact that an e-bucks or a Bitcoin is secured cryptographically in a public ledger called a blockchain, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the e-bucks is secured in a ledger which sits in the data center of First National Bank. So completely different. The other thing about Bitcoins is that it's completely peer-to-peer. That means that I deal directly with another party. I don't need a bank or a switch in the middle. It's two wallets talking to each other. There's no middleman. The Bitcoins are kept specifically in wallets. It's an electronic place, like an account. Like you would have a bank account, this is just an electronic version. It's not tied to a bank, please understand that. And this is where you keep your Bitcoins. You have to have some place where you keep record of your own Bitcoins. And the transactions are verified by an interconnected network of nodes, which are called miners. Now, I saw there were some miners sitting over there with the blue shirts. But for the rest of us, I'll explain to you in a minute what mining means. Okay. All right. So, and the transactions are recorded in the public ledger, like I said before. This public ledger is called blockchain. And as I also mentioned, in the FNB example, that sits in a computer system in the FNB data center. With Bitcoin, those transactions are sitting in the blockchain. And the blockchain is completely distributed. What does that mean? The physical file, the database that contains this ledger, every participant in that blockchain economy, the Bitcoin ecosystem, has a copy of that database. Okay, so it's completely distributed. Cool. Okay, so I'd like to talk a little bit about blockchain because I think Bitcoin is an application that sits on top of blockchain, and blockchain is what's really interesting in this conversation. So I'm going to spend some time on that if you don't mind. So the first thing is that there are three central constructs. I don't have a better term for that. So the first one is obviously the users. These are the people that transact with each other, and it's in a blockchain, in a Bitcoin environment that's represented by the wallets. Then we have the public ledger. This is not exactly what you're talking about. This is the blockchain ledger, which is cryptographically secured. We're going to explain that in a minute. And then the third thing is the miners. And like I said, that's a network of nodes. And when I say network, it's not a private network. It's people and computers connected to the internet. It's open to everybody. All right. And they are the ones who verify the transactions and also write it to the blockchain. Okay, so how does a blockchain work? Hey, the slide came out nice. Yeah. We had to do a little bit of reformatting quickly this morning. Okay. So think of it this way. We've got now people transacting with each other. And whenever a transaction takes place, that is broadcast to all the miners in the network. And at the moment, there are thousands of them. Okay, it's another conversation. What then happens is that these miners, they add the transactions to a block. And then at some point, okay, and it's again, there's a bit technology behind it, so I'm not going to get too much into that. But at some point, they all agree, we have now a block, and this block is going to be processed. We want to verify that all the transactions are correct inside, and then we want to add it to the blockchain. So the way they do that is that they perform a very sophisticated, complex mathematical algorithm to this block. It's like they have to solve a very, very difficult problem. And if they solve that problem, the solution is called a proof of work. So the first miner that can produce a piece of work, proof of work, I beg your pardon, can produce this proof of work, they will broadcast that to the rest of the miners. The other miners will then look at this proof of work and they will validate. They'll say, yes, it is a true reflection of the solution. And at that point, everybody stops working on that block. They take this winning miner, they take his block and put it onto the blockchain. The winning miner collects his prize. At the moment, that's 12.5 Bitcoins. And then they all start working on the next block. And so this thing continues over and over and over. Okay. So another way to look at this, as you can see there, we've got all these transactions coming in. They're going to sit in a block. This block is validated and verified by and this is the mining process. And once that's completed, it gets added to this block, this chain of blocks. Okay. At the moment, there's about 500,000 blocks in the blockchain, the one that's used by Bitcoin. And they get added one every 10 minutes, roughly. It's about 145 blocks per day that gets added. Okay. Okay, so a few things I'd like to highlight. I see we've got just about 9 minutes left, so I'm going to quickly go through this because I'd like to hear your questions. Okay, a few things you must remember about Bitcoin specifically. A Bitcoin transaction is irreversible. Now, you must understand this. It is irreversible. You cannot reverse it. Not you, not the miners, not the president of South Africa. Nobody can reverse it. So if you spent your money with a fraudulent party or somebody hacked your wallet and they spent your money on your behalf, I'm sorry, it's gone. Okay. If you're interested, I've been following a blog lately of a person who lost 440 of his Bitcoins out of a wallet. And I'll tell you that whole story, but we can do that over the break in the back there. Okay. The next thing is we talk about, it's anonymous. If you look at all of those characters in blue there, those are all addresses that link these transactions to individual wallets. And me as a person, I can have as many wallets as I want, and I can trade out of all of them. The bottom line is that this is totally anonymous. You can't track who are dealing in these Bitcoins. All right, so a few more things. It's fast and global. I mean, if I pay somebody with a Bitcoin, it's pretty much instantaneous. And it takes a few minutes, and then it's added to the blockchain itself. Again, you don't have clearing periods and all those kind of things like you typically have with banks. It is very secure. All of this cryptography that we're talking about and all those things, it's all based on math. So you get security with math, not with trust. And that is what makes it so strong. Okay. It's permissionless. You can do with your Bitcoins whatever you like. Nobody can tell you when you can spend them, what you can spend them on, if you're allowed to spend them, or whatever. It's totally up to you. There's a limited supply. This is a big, how shall I say, controversial topic as far as central banks are concerned. It's the supply of money. Because the more money you print, effectively, the less your money is worth, because it represents all the stuff that's in your economy. And that's then the cause of inflation. So, but again, I'm not here to talk about central banks. All I'm saying to you is that with cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin specifically, there's a limited supply. They generate about 1,800 Bitcoins per day. And the last one will be minted. That's the process of generating new ones. Will be minted roughly about 2140. That's the last number I heard. Okay, good. Oops, sorry, wrong one. Okay, so I want to talk about stats real quick. We don't have any more time. So at the moment, listen to this, there are 1,300 cryptocurrencies out there and counting. I mean, they literally generate their initial coin offerings just about every other week. In fact, I saw South Africa had its first coin offering, I think it was now November, beginning of November. I don't know if anybody followed that. It's called Ubu. All right, so welcome to the Bitcoin economy, or the cryptocurrency. Anyway, so 1,300, as I said, compared to 180 hard currencies that's recognized by the United Nations. What is also interesting is that the total market capitalization for all of these cryptocurrencies are roughly about 241 billion. That was as of, I think, on Saturday or Friday. I can't remember now. That's a huge amount of money. That's 70% of the South African economy. And you know what's the best of all? It took 8 years to get there. So I don't want to start a huge discussion here, but I think it's here to stay. All right. And then just one last thing I want to mention, and that is the fact that Bitcoin, everybody knows it, it's very big. It's more than 50% of the total market cap of these cryptocurrencies. But understand, it's just one of many. There are really many of those. All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Questions, please.